We are back on Lori's revenge tour, and she is causing more issues right off the bat. Lori's motion to have the judge removed, yet again, was denied. This time, you can't even make that 10.1 motion she made after a trial begins. That's not all, though. One of Lori's attorneys is late due to a child care issue. The other advisory attorney isn't there because she's making copies in her office. The judge says this is wholly unacceptable. Miss Daybell, you represent yourself. You do not need your advisory counsel here. I will split the difference with you. If she is not here at 9:50 a.m., we are going to start. She should have been here at 9:30. If this was federal court, she would probably have been taken into custody. This is ridiculous. Yes, Lori's lawyer. Not going well. Hey, she's representing herself. The judge came back, and Lori's attorney, who was making copies, was there, said they were emailed last night, but she was unable to do it then, and the judge repeats she's expected to be there at 9:30. Not a great start, but at least we didn't lose a jury member today, like we did yesterday. Now, there is talk already of Lori's opening statement, because guess what? It was a problem. Lori is a problem. That opening statement opened a door, a lot, possibly. Lori told the jury she has no malice towards people and was loving. She spoke about Brandon hiring a private investigator. It appears the defendant is trying to bring in 404 character evidence against herself. She isn't allowed to bring this in accordance to the rules. Assuming she does bring it in, this means the rules permit the state to bring in evidence about Lori. The state believes it will allow the state to bring in she is a 4-time convicted murderer. Next, about bringing up Brandon hiring a PI, it's to act like he has some vendetta against her. The state has worked hard to say there was an incident in Chandler. Brandon was very aware this defendant was, and her brother had shot and killed Charles Vallow. This is why Brandon was afraid for his life and trying to find out where Lori and Alex were. So if she does want to get into the information, she's opening the door for Brandon to explain why he was in so much fear for his life and why he hired the PI. The state wants to make it clear. If Lori goes into those areas, they want to bring in her involvement in the murder of Charles Vallow, the murder of her own children, and her current husband's wife's murder. And the state believes that under 405, they'll be permitted to do it. Remember 404, 405, you're going to hear them mentioned a few times. You think this is the last time this is going to get brought up? No. We are knocking on that door. The judge says he thought the same during the opening statements, especially when Lori says she's a good person, or the person with good intent and kindness and love. You can't say that if you're Lori Vallow. You literally can't say that in court if you're Lori Vallow. The judge thought she was opening the door, but that wasn't witness testimony, and the jury is instructed that the opening isn't evidence or testimony, but the state's notice is taken. And Lori, during this whole time, seems to be angrily cleaning her glasses. The judge tells Lori if she elicits testimony like that of a witness or testifies herself, it does open that door. So Lori got her, what should have been, final warning. That should be her final warning, and Lori says she understands. But as the judge starts to speak, she interrupts him and says, I also understand the state withdrew their 404B, and they have no intention of doing that. The judge says that doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want. And Lori says, I wasn't that. I'm just saying they did give a notice for 404B and withdrew it. The judge explains if she brings in her good character, they can rebuke that testimony because she opened the door. So basically, I think I covered this in a previous video. At one point, the state was planning to bring in the murder of Charles Vallow. That was just going to be part of the case, and they decided not to. Lori seems to think because they said that and withdrew, she can now knock on the door and the state can't answer, essentially. She thinks that they can't bring up the fact that she is not a perfect little ray of sunshine because they withdrew that. And that's simply not the case. But we're back. Remember, Brandon's going to be up. He's already testified for the state. And Lori needed more time because Lori causes issues. So this is going to be the detective witness first. The witness from yesterday is back up for Lori's cross. This witness collected evidence just a projectile. He can't recall a cigarette being collected. He collected the items in the F-150. He said those are frequently used at ranges. Everything found in the F-150, that would be the earplugs and a fake bullet. He didn't learn Alex Cox frequented shooting ranges. The truck had a personalized license plate. Doesn't know what the plate means, and he didn't know that Alex Cox did stand-up comedy. Yes, I love it. I love how Lori is doing this. She loves to bring up things that make no sense. Yeah, so my brother who, right now they're talking about how he shot and tried to kill someone. Did you know he's a comedian? He's a real funny guy. Like, what? They moved past it. He said the hole in the Tesla was from a bullet from a gun. The fragments weren't tested as to what type of gun. Lori asked about a neighbor hearing a loud sound. They didn't think it was a gunshot. Objection, hearsay, sustained. But he collected the fragment. Objection, asked, answered, sustained. This is where I knew today could get really wild. Everyone is just tired of Lori. Generally, I've watched a couple pro se people. Generally, when they repeat something like this, they get away with it a few times. Doesn't seem to be the case. I think that everyone's just done with her. It's not really worth it with a pro se defendant to object to this, is what I'm saying. Lori asked if the majority of the bullet was recovered, just a fragment. Pieces might have fallen out while Brandon drove. Lori asked for an explanation of how a bullet could fall out. He used a comparison of a cup of coffee on the top of the roof of your car. That was pretty good. I honestly, my thought was, what do you mean? Like, it's so obvious that if you had a bullet, pieces of it are just kind of barely sitting at the side of a car. It didn't penetrate all the way through. Of course it could fall out, right? But his explanation about the coffee, I liked it. I didn't think of that. I liked it. I mean, I still think it was common sense, but I liked the comparison. Lori asks where the fragment was located, and he wasn't the one who found it. Lori is asking if fragments would have been wedged in, and he says he didn't find anything. Lori's trying to claim that, like, the fragment was found in the bullet hole, and that wasn't the case. It was found in I believe, it was actually found in the, like, liner where it had fallen out of the bullet hole. But, I don't know. Her line of questioning was really weird. Like, she seemed to not know where the bullet was, put it that way. And this witness wasn't the one who collected it, so he couldn't really say. Lori said that the car wasn't in motion, the bullet would have been intact, and the witness says no. And honestly, at this point, I wonder if she's going to ask about bamboo stopping bullets. We're getting all of the highlights, right? The projectile wasn't tested. A test maybe could have determined the type of bullet. This witness wasn't the case detective. He didn't ask for it. Talk of seeing the copper jacket color, and Lori asked if the copper color could have come from the Tesla, and the Tesla wasn't copper. So the witness hasn't seen any camera footage, and they went over the time frame he worked on the case, and there's a redirect. The Tesla had damage to the molding. They show the image of the damage, explain there isn't a great seal at the top, shows glass in the driveway with a divot. The seal being damaged caused a good chance for fragments to fall out due to damage to the seal. He explains what a casing and a fragment is. If only the barrel was outside the Jeep, you would expect the casing to land inside the Jeep. There would be no reason for a casing by the pool, and they always look, but they expect the casing to be inside the vehicle. Next up is a very short witness, Lynette Mendoza. She is a neighbor to Brandon at the time and had a Ring camera. They play and emit the video. You see a black vehicle and a loud bang. So, you get to hear the bang. It's not a paintball gun. Let's put it that way. Lori has no questions. Now it is Brandon's time to be crossed by Lori. Remember, this is her revenge tour and a chance for her to directly harass the victim. Last time, she had a few people she wanted to harass, family of the victim. This time, she gets to go directly to the victim. First question. Do you remember my green chili chicken enchiladas? I'm joking. But if you didn't watch the last Lori Vallow trial, this is the level I want you to be prepared for, okay? I typed this before the testimony was watched by me. This is my note. I want you to be prepared. That's the type of thing Lori does. Lori met Brandon in 2008 before he got married. Lori says he got married in 2009. He corrects her to 2008. Bad right off the start. Lori's going to try to be some expert about their marriage and doesn't know when they got married. Lori says, so we knew each other a long time, and he says a long time can mean a lot of things. There was a familial connection. Lori says we always had a friendly relationship, correct? He says he wouldn't say always. He says probably till the end of 2018. Him and Melanie married in 2008. not 2018. They divorced in 2018. Lori asked about, I think it's 2018. Anyway, it's supposed to be 2008. Lori asked about being at the wedding, being at childbirth. State objects, relevance. Like literally, she's doing the character witness thing, the thing she was told not to do. The judge allows it, correct? Lori says she was present for the second child, and he corrects her. She was not present for the birth of the second child. She just visited his family. Lori says she flew in from Hawaii for the third child. The state, in a very obvious angry tone, objects to character evidence. Sustained. Lori says she watched the kids for the fourth birth. She doesn't care. If you haven't watched Lori, when she wants to harass a witness, she doesn't care about objections. Objection. Sustained. State says they are going into the 405's area soon. That is the state warning Lori the jury is going to learn about her murders. By saying 405, she can be very clear to Lori, and the jury doesn't know what a 405 is. Lori says they went on vacations, correct? And the state started to get a statement out, but the judge literally cut in and told Lori to move on to relevant information. Lori asked about him visiting her in Hawaii a few times. The state objects. Lori says she is wanting to talk about him coming to her. The judge says approach, and they're at the bench. We hear more about this later. Lori says they had never had an argument with the witness. That is not correct. Lori asks when did they have an argument. Object to relevance because it isn't specific. Overruled. June 25th is the most recent. Lori asks, have you ever been upset with me before that? He said, I'm sure at some point. Lori asked for anything specific before June 25th. Object to relevance sustained. Lori asked if he was upset about Juice Island. I'm going to be honest, I don't know the Juice Island lore. I actually went back to re-listen. Thought I must have still misheard. Checked Nate Eaton. He did say Juice Island in his text, so I didn't mishear it from court. Okay. Object to relevance and 404. Again, opening a door threat. Sustained. Lori and Melanie were close. He can't say if Lori loved Melanie or not. Lori really wanted him to say that she loved Melanie. Lori says that he witnessed Lori loving Melanie. He says he can't state Lori's feelings. Lori asks if she acted lovingly. Objection. Relevance 404, 405. Could not be more character evidence. Sustained. They were together frequently as a family, sometimes at his house. Objection sustained. Lori says until he sent a text, which they read yesterday, they had never had disagreements. He does not agree with that statement. Lori asked if they ever had an argument. He said they had disagreements. The witness can't remember a specific time face to face, but he's not directly confrontational. Lori says, so we haven't had an argument, and he doesn't agree with that. Lori asks if she is a confrontational person. Objection, 404, 405. Imagine if he was allowed to answer, yes, you are a murderer. You confronted Charles and took his phone physically away from him before your brother shot him. Yes, I watched your last trial. You're very confrontational. Imagine if he could say the things he probably wants to say. Lori asked, did she support him, the witness as a father? Objection, relevance sustained. So you get the feeling now, and you might be like, okay, she's got her stuff out. She's done, right? No. This is where we get worse. And I want you to be braced for that. We get worse. The argument with Melanie was the 25th. It started in the afternoon and went past midnight. He remembers the day because it was a painful day. The argument was about going to his grandfather's funeral. Lori asked if he knew Melanie had trauma with all funerals after her mother died when she was 7. Objection, relevance, but allowed. He can't say what she was feeling. Lori keeps pushing for an answer, and he says he isn't Melanie. The mother passed when she was 9. Yes, she had to go to the funeral. Objection sustained. Lori says, but she was your wife of 10 years, so you knew that. Objection. Relevance sustained. Lori starts talking about how it makes sense for a husband to want their wife at a funeral. Objection. Testifying. Lori asks again if it started with a funeral argument. Correct. Lori asks if Melanie was crying, and he responds, no. Brandon was the one crying. The argument involved several things. Lori got brought up about him hacking her computer, according to Melanie. That was talked about a lot, because he was trying to figure out the relevance to anything. Melanie kept going back to that. Excuse me. Melanie viewed Lori as a mother-like figure. Lori tried to compare herself to a mother-in-law. That was cringy. Trying to compare herself to a mother-in-law. Oh my. Imagine your wife's aunt tries to kill you and then it's like, well, I'm like your mother-in-law. Oh my God. Objections to speculation sustained. Lori wasn't the focus of the whole argument. His focus was his life and his family. He didn't want them to go through pain. And Lori, being a cunt, what she is that why you spent all those hours arguing? Like, that's going to be a gotcha. He goes, yeah, because I love them and I wanted to work through things with my wife. I hate that shit. I've seen people do that shit where they're like, well, if you really love them, why are you arguing with them? Because sometimes an argument has to happen to get through something. Like, Melanie is telling him he's hacking into computers and he's a homosexual because Lori is spreading a cult, right? Like, you don't want him to argue. What do you want him to do? What do you want him to do, Lori? Oh, you're right. Lori is, he's supposed to go, Lori is translated. She knows more about me than myself. Like, this is an insight into Lori. Because she definitely thought that was a gotcha. Because to Lori, if anyone argues with her, I'm assuming she goes, the other person is the problem. The other person is to blame. The other person is the one who's in the wrong because Lori is always right. And I hate the people that are like, well, you're arguing and I'm not arguing back, so therefore I'm right. No. Sometimes you're just an asshole. Sometimes you're just a narcissistic asshole who thinks that makes them feel superior. It doesn't mean you won the argument. Lori is, in my opinion, in this trial, really showing herself. And if you watch the last trial, you feel it. And I hate to say it, this gets worse. Remember, this is not even, we're still going. Lori asked if one of the issues was text messages that Melanie had viewed. Lori asked if one of those issues was a video of him dancing at the pink pony that Melanie had showed him. Now, I tried to find the pink pony. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong place. It looked like a restaurant, a bar. I was expecting, like, the way she's saying it, I was expecting like a flamboyant gay club, right? Like a gay bar. Maybe that's what she means. That's not what I could find. Maybe Lori, maybe Lori is just talking about the restaurant / bar, and it was like a karaoke night or something with dancing or something. And Lori's like, well, the jury will think he's gay because of Pink Pony, and so will the people. Like, how would him theoretically dancing at the Pink Pony excuse a conspiracy to commit first-degree murder charge? Like, that is the core of this, right? This is a revenge tour. Remember, Lori is not doing this. She is not doing this to win a case. She is just doing this for her own entertainment, her own payback. Obviously, objection relevance 404, 403 sustained. Lori again asked about the video. State objects, judge sustains. Oh, you think it's done with the video? No, Lori doesn't let anything go. We'll be back to it. What else was discussed during the argument? Objection, relevance, foundation, something specific, sustained. I am getting heated. I am sorry. Reading this back is just making me more heated than even watching it the first time, because you get to think about it more. Lori asked how many topics in the argument he couldn't say. Lori never replied to the text he sent. Lori asked if he blamed her for the argument, and he said he was focused on himself and his wife. This is again where Lori was like, with the witness that had the date with Charles, did you spend the whole night talking about me or whatever it was? Again, she's like, oh, you spent your whole argument talking about me? It's all to feed her ego. It's all to feed her ego. That's all this is. Melanie told him she needed a divorce at the end of the argument, but he's the one that filed it. He doesn't know when the mediator actually put in the paperwork. In July, finalized mid-October, the mediation was complete. Melanie moved into the rental house around July 14th. He stayed until the home sold, closing October 1st, but he moved into the rental house around mid-September, maybe the 25th. We already got this. He moved in early because Melanie got him to do it so he could spend time with the kids. He had a schedule with children as part of the divorce. He took the kids to school that morning of the shooting, dropped the kid off with Melanie, dropped the other one off at preschool, and then went to the gym. That day was the first day he met the detective. He answered the detective's questions, discussed Melanie, discussed Lori. He asked about what happened. They mentioned the divorce. By the way, anytime he's about to discuss Lori with the detective, they discussed how she killed Charles, right? Her and Alex. Brandon told the detective that someone had convinced Melanie he was gay. He said he wasn't sure how he worded it. He didn't tell him that he did not tell the detective that Melanie had a friend named Lori. He said an aunt named Lori. Lori gets really excited and asks if he'd like to review the transcript. He reads it and says he believes it was mistranscribed because he wouldn't have called her a friend named Lori. He also said he never said Lori is who convinced Melanie he was gay. Lori says, "Isn't that what you said in the second paragraph?" Objection, improper, sustained. Lori asks if you'd like to read it again. He says, "If you want me to." And he says he specifically said he thought Lori had been involved in convincing her that he was gay. He didn't blame Lori entirely, but she was involved. Lori says she did not show you a video of you dancing at the pink pony. I told you it was going to come up again. Objection. 404B, sustained. It's all sustained. The judges goes, it's all sustained. How did Lori convince Melanie? Objection, speculation, sidebar. 15-minute recess. Judge does not look happy. Lori looks kind of pleased with herself, in my opinion. She looks smug. Let me know if you watched. Did I get these facial expressions right? I went back and reviewed, got the same feeling multiple times. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, right? The judge explains the sidebar. It was to explain to Lori that she has to be very careful getting into areas that could open doors. Another sidebar earlier that didn't make it into court records is that she's bringing up being a good person with no ill intent. It can open the door too. The state mentioned she can open the door with the same arguments as before. Lori says that would be 404B, which they withdrew. And the judge starts to explain, if you bring it up. And Lori kind of yells over him. Then if 404 is entered, do we get a hearing if I open the door? If I open the door, do we stop trial and I get a hearing? Lori wants to stop trial. Something she's been trying to do. She starts to keep going, and the judge, standing, yells for her to stop. Says, if you talk about your great character, we will have a short hearing on how they can rebut that character. Lori starts to speak, but the judge says, which could include being convicted of 4 murders. The judge says, speak to your advisory council during the break. And Lori says, you don't need to yell at me either. The judge says he isn't. Lori says he is, and you don't need to talk to me that way. I am being very courteous to you. The judge demands Lori be removed from the courtroom. The judge says she has been nothing close to courteous during these proceedings, and Lori is led out. And I watched a few times, don't get a good look, but I think she had a little bit of a smirk. I think she had a smirk. And hopefully, if you had any question, am I insulting Lori too much? Am I being too mean to her? Maybe this isn't just a revenge tour. Maybe she isn't causing problems on purpose. If you had any of that in your head, I hope it's gone. I hope this clears up. I see people. It's rare. It's rare, and a lot of times they delete their comments. I do see people comment about how I can be too opinionated and mean. Well, I'm gonna be honest. I think in a lot of cases I give people too much credit when I'm trying to do the benefit of the doubt. But in a case like this, with the things she's doing, I would love to know. This is the thing I would love. I would love someone to find someone who supports Lori, like believed her story, explain away her conduct for this trial. I would love it. She is showing the world what she is. And what's crazy is this is the first part. There's more to come. We'll get to that in a moment. We are back, and if you thought the last segment was outrageous, it is going to get worse. The judge says if Lori keeps continuing lines of questioning after an objection, and she continues speaking over the judge and speaking over the prosecutor, he may be forced to revoke her ability to be her own lawyer. But now, after saying that, we're back to Lori getting her revenge on Brandon. Yesterday, Brandon talked about the argument on June 25th. Lori asks if he had marital problems in his 10 years of marriage. Objection. Judge allows briefly, and he says sometimes you don't agree. Lori asks if his travel would be a point of contention. Objection. Relevance sustained. Remember, this is not about getting Lori not convicted. This is about revenge. Remember that. She's doing it for revenge. Anyone telling you differently? I don't think they're being honest. Brandon said that Melanie goes to the temple often. Lori says Brandon told the detective that Melanie had prayed about it and God answered her in a call. He said he doesn't remember if that's what was said, but he would be happy to read the transcript to recall. And he said that isn't what he read there. And Lori asked, can he say what he read? And that's an improper question, so objection. Lori says that God answered in a call that Brandon was gay. Brandon says that had nothing to do with the temple. Melanie frequented the temple. Lori says Melanie was convinced Brandon was gay due to God. Brandon keeps going, he doesn't understand. Lori says Melanie had her own personal revelation about that idea about you. He said he can't say what Melanie is thinking. Lori says she said God answered her in a call. Objection sustained. I'm sorry if this gets messy around this point. There's a lot of the same question answered the same way, and now for some reason we aren't getting the objections I expected. Lori says that he told the detective that God told Melanie that Brandon was gay. He said he was relaying what was said on June 25th. He said on June 25th, Melanie thought Brandon was gay. Brandon told the detective that Lori convinced Melanie that he was gay because of conversations that he had with Charles Vallow. Yes, Charles Vallow warned Brandon that Lori was telling Melanie he was gay. Brandon didn't hear Lori say he was gay directly. Brandon heard it from Charles Vallow. Lori repeats again about a friend named Lori, which he said is a typo. Again, Lori asks if he heard from Melanie that Lori convinced her that Brandon is gay. We're going to keep going with, she wants to try to embarrass him by telling the public he's gay without evidence. And even if he is gay, who cares? And also, like, that you're on trial for conspiracy to murder, Lori. This is a woman who killed her kids. This is a woman who plotted the murder of her husband, is now on trial for plotting another murder. And she's like, yeah, the public's going to take my side and believe what I say. Lori says, Melanie showed you a video on Facebook. Objection, relevance, 404B, 403. Judge says sustained. We are not talking about the video. Lori says she personally believed it has nothing to do with me. Objection, asked and answers. Objection sustained on form of question. Brandon can't remember how many reasons Melanie gave. The detective asked if she had any evidence. Lori had Brandon's answers brought up in a transcript. Brandon told the detective that Melanie had silly evidence. Lori wants specifics. Objection, relevance. Judge says calls for hearsay sustained. Lori asks, was he aware that she had silly evidence? Objection. Judge asks how she knew. And he said he knew from conversations. Lori said she didn't show it to you. She just talked about it. Objection sustained. It says, I don't know how many times we need to. A judge says, objection sustained. Basically, literally the state was about to say, I don't know how many times we need to go over this. Judge stopped her at need to and says, judge says objection sustained, time to move on. He called it silly evidence, and he doesn't remember, he doesn't remember things 100% accurate. They talked to the detective. Lori says it's a contradictory to tell the detective that day that Lori convinced her while Melanie had her own evidence, and he doesn't think it's contradictory. Lori asks, how do you think I convinced her? He said he had conversations with other people. That was something you were doing. So literally, he was told by Charles Vallow, here's what Lori's doing. And then Melanie starts saying those things. He didn't hear Melanie say Lori did it. Lori asked about being asked if he saw a vehicle before, about the Jeep. He wants to read what he said. He said he didn't recall at the time. Brandon said olive or puke green about the Jeep. Brandon said he doesn't know if he saw that Jeep before that day. He didn't think about the color of Lori's Jeep before that day. Lori asked, had her Jeep ever been at his old house before? He says, maybe, I don't know. People don't pay attention to other people's vehicles that often. But Lori, remember, she's the center of attention. You got to remember her Jeep. You got to remember her green chili chicken enchiladas. Remember that. That's the rule. He said at one point, Charles called him to run VINs on all vehicles for insurance reasons. He got the VIN, hadn't thought about it since. He looked up the details for insurance, but didn't dive in past that. Lori says, when it came to your mind on October 2nd, what came to your mind on October 2nd? And he wants more context. Him wanting more context is code for, look, what came to my mind was you killed Charles Vallow, and he's also the one that warned me about Melanie, you telling Melanie I was gay, and now I'm being shot at, but I can't say that. I know I can't say that, so what are you actually going for? Again, he agreed to read what he said that day, because Lori's wanting to really go into these transcripts that seem to be off. He said he saw a two-door Wrangler. He said earlier he didn't know what her Jeep was. He can't even remember when he got the VIN number, but he did insurance the last few months of 2018, I think he said. Lori says when talking to detectives that he saw a little boy. So out of nowhere, Lori is like, what about this little boy you told the detective about? And Brandon is confused. He does not know what's going on and says he didn't say that. Objection, foundation. She wants to show him the transcript. Sage says she can just ask the questions properly. Ask the witness questions properly. He said he did not see a little boy that day. Lori says he told it to the detectives, and he said he didn't. He believes that's a typo. It's in the middle of him describing the window. He didn't think it was a paintball gun because he saw a little boy. Lori asked if he said it was just kids being kids. Another review. Lori says you told the detectives you saw a little boy and it was a paintball gun. Objection, he simply did not say that. Sustained. Kids being kids was a reference to when he was trying to explain why he thought it might have been a paintball gun while still on 911 because he couldn't see a bullet hole while driving away. No kids were on the street playing paintball that day. No kids were walking around in the morning, a bright sunny day. Honestly, it's like Lori is trying to paint this picture of what was a bright sunny day and the kids weren't playing. No, Lori. No. They were in school. They were in school, Lori. He literally dropped his kids off to school. Where do you think the other kids are, Lori? He says no one told him what he was thinking when on 9... Sorry about that. He says no, he didn't talk about kids being kids with the detective because that's what he was thinking. He told that to the detective because he was talking about what his thought process was while on 911. Lori asked, why did you explain that to the detective? And he said, why? He said, I just told you why. Literally, he is repeating, I was explaining my thoughts while on 911 to the detective. And Lori is like, no, there's a boy. And he just keeps having to repeat the same thing because Lori's repeating the question slightly different. He was certain he was shot at by a gun by the time he talked to the detective because he saw a bullet hole. Now we're back to talking about the drive. He went to the park and did a U-turn, went back to the house. Lori argues about what the definition of U-turn is, I guess, and she gets pleased with the answer. I don't know. He drove into the driveway and didn't get into the garage. The garage door was open because the Tesla automatically opens it when he pulls in. He parked, put the keys on the dashboard, and did not move the vehicle until detectives were done. The door automatically opens when he parks. The window fell out as the door fell out without any assistance. He did not touch the window. He can't remember if he walked to the end of the driveway or not. He said he might have been wrong on saying 911 told him to stay in the vehicle when he saw he recalled that. He doesn't know how glass that was on him fell when he got out. Lori asks, wasn't he scared to stand in a driveway after being shot at? And he explains he saw the Jeep leave and was told to go back to his house. He doesn't know the name of the detective who showed up. He tried to explain what happened. He doesn't remember her putting her pen in the bullet hole. They talked on the sidewalk. He called his friends after being overwhelmed seeing the bullet hole. He thought of his dad because that was his rock. He kind of tears up a little bit, but called his friends over. He doesn't know who let him call his friends. He doesn't know before questioning or officers arriving. He was in shock. He doesn't know if crime scene tape was up. They stayed with him the whole day. They stayed with him after the police left. He doesn't know if officers entered the house or garage. He says maybe they did to clear the house. He doesn't remember if he texted or called his friends. He doesn't know if friends got interviewed. He doesn't know where his friends were while he was interviewed in a police car. He doesn't know how long the interview lasted. He doesn't know all of the different officers he may have spoken to. Remember, all of this is in contrast to Lori being nonchalant after watching Charles Vallow be murdered. I think in her mind, she's like, well, I remember it all, and I was calm, and I got the flip-flops in the Burger King. Why is he freaking out? Murder's just every day for me. He doesn't know how many times he got phone calls with the detective, or texts, or emails. Lori is hammering this stuff. He doesn't count. Lori asks if he recognizes the email between him and the detective. He says he understands what it says, but he doesn't know where it's from. So basically, Lori hands him something. Do you recognize this email? And he's like, I can read it, but I don't know what it's from. And at this point, we get a break. And this is where things get spicy, exciting, drama, tea, possibly another trial. Or 3. Judge is looking at the paper that was handed to Brandon. The judge asks if Lori plans to admit it, and this is where the problems start. Judge asks what is relevant. He says it could be relevant to this discussion. The judge says, how is it relevant to the... Lori says it could be relevant to the discussion. The judge asks, how is it relevant to the jury? Lori says this will be information that is given from Brandon, but how is it relevant to the case? Lori says the last line is relevant. Detective Pillar says this information is requested to see if Melanie has a financial gain from Brandon's death. That's the last line. That's motive for Melanie. That could be fair. The state says that what this actually is a conglomeration of 3 emails, not just one email. It's a problem. 2, Lori is trying to do is Lori trying to do a third-party defense? Is she trying to say this is all Melanie? But Melanie has an active investigation that is still going on. The state has referred to her as an active member of this conspiracy. This is opening the door. It might relate to the Melanie case, Tammy Daybell case, the Charles Vallow case. So to infer this is just about this defendant is disingenuous. Lori wants to admit it and question him on it. Judge says it could be relevant and not misleading. She didn't notice a third-party defense, and the state wants to know if that's what she's going to do. Lori says no third-party defense. Lori says this isn't trying to blame Melanie. State has an alleged financial gain, or much of a motive, because they're trying to keep out what happened previously. If we go into motives, they have proof in the previous trial. The state says they can go into the overarching cult activities. The state wasn't going to go into that, but if we're going to do that, we can change our witnesses. This is crazy. How does Melanie not get charged? Obviously, open investigation, whatever. How does Melanie not get charged? I don't know if this was public. I don't think it was public there was an open investigation into Melanie. The public is going to demand her be charged. Any case where she can be charged, they're going to demand it. They were demanding it before. So Lori just put public pressure on the prosecution of 2 separate states to go after Melanie. think it's 2 states. In addition, she might have just opened the door to the jury learning about so much. I don't know how the judge is going to handle it. The judge can't. I don't think the judge can stop Lori. I want to put it that way. I don't think the judge can claim this is not relevant. It is relevant. It's relevant. But that relevance has to also be argued from the other side. And I don't think he can hold the state back, or much at all. How do you hold the state back? I'm very excited for the next part. As I said, I do these in segments. I stopped here. How do you stop the state from diving into headfirst into all of this? How do you stop the state? Isn't fair to stop them and let Lori just push these narratives. We're going to find out. We are back. The judge has a specific question Lori can ask and tells her she should probably write it down. In February of 2020, while this case was being investigated, did Detective Pillar ask you to provide any documentation which might support whether Melanie might have had a financial motive for your murder or death? The state may ask follow-up questions if any financial motive existed, such as life insurance policy. Judge doesn't know the answer to the question, and if she was the beneficiary. Additionally, the defendant has opened the door somewhat. The state may ask and redirect a question along the lines of all the communication you had with Pillar was not only about this case, correct? Some of your communication were in relation to a separate investigation. I'm going to be honest, I don't like this. I don't like this because there's a chance the jury's like, oh, he was making up other cases against her. That's not what we know happened. Depending on what Lori does, the judge warned the door might open more. The exhibit itself won't be entered because it has other non-relevant information. Remember, it was a combination of like 3 emails. The judge says when Detective Pillar comes, you can ask why he would seek that type of information. Lori is back. Did the detective ask you to provide proof Melanie had a financial gain from your death? He did, and he sent it to him. He provided the detective with a life insurance policy. He didn't know if there was anything else. He doesn't know if he sent the rental agreements for him and Melanie's house. He doesn't know if he provided information on shared accounts. He doesn't remember if he gave him his contact to Chase Bank. A lot of this is old, and he doesn't remember exactly what he sent. Lori says so we can help demonstrate Melanie's financial gain if he were to pass away. He said, I didn't say that. He doesn't remember him asking for that. He doesn't know exactly what he asked for. They talked about financial gain. Lori asked for him to look at the document from before. Again, read it. He can't recall what he provided. Lori asked about screenshots, objection, foundation. The witness says he gave the detective his phone, so he'd have access to all of it. Lori asked about 6 screenshots to show Melanie's financial gain, and he can't recall. Lori wants to show him something, but it's sidebar time. Life insurance was active as of October 2nd, and Lori asked if Melanie had a life insurance on him. He said he didn't know of it. Mediation agreement was shared with the detective. Did it require her to get life insurance on herself with him as a beneficiary? Objection, relevance sustained. The beneficiary on Brandon's life insurance was Melanie. He can't change it without both parties. That's a difference between Charles Vallow. Remember, Charles could change it. He can't do it. Is that why he was targeted? Lori asked if he sent other financial information. Objection sustained. Brandon met with the prosecutor to prep for testimony 2 times, a couple hours both times. They reviewed documents, refreshed things. He didn't look at financial documents. He reviewed the 911 call and the Detective Pillar's interview. Some Teslas have cameras. His Tesla has a camera, but his Tesla doesn't save recordings. It's probably cameras more for like, he mentioned like when the door opens or sensors so it doesn't bump things things like that. The Jeep was nose to nose with the van, almost touching. The Jeep went past him. He saw it in the rearview mirror and then out of the side. He couldn't see anyone. He's seen Alex Cox before, but he couldn't tell who was driving the Jeep. He didn't see the driver. He didn't give a plate number. Lori said you had your phone in your hand when talking to 911. He said, well, he was on speakerphone, but he probably had the phone in his hands. He didn't take a picture of the Jeep when it drove by. Lori asked if he personally took photos of his Tesla after the shooting. He says he sold it, so he took lots of pictures. He took a picture at some point with the missing window. He doesn't remember anything of the bullet hole or who if he sent it to them. He doesn't know if he sent it to his dad or friends. Objection, relevant, sustained. He doesn't know how long after he sold it. He gave it to police, and after they were done, he had it all repaired. He doesn't know what all those repairs were, but he paid for it to be repaired. He said the car looked the same after the police gave it back as when they took it. He can't remember how long to have the car repaired, and he borrowed a friend's car during that time. He didn't, get a rental. Lori asked at what point did he decide the Jeep was gray and not puke green or camo? That'll be relevant in a minute. You might know why it's relevant already. There's been a hint. He said he doesn't understand. He said several colors. He didn't get it was a gray van from the VIN number. He doesn't remember when he said it was gray. He said he identifies puke green as gray as a similar color. He can't say what reports say, just what he said. He doesn't know if VIN numbers even give the color of a car. He doesn't remember looking up the VIN of the Jeep after October 2nd. He did give the VIN to the detectives, he believes, on October 2nd. Lori asked so he would know it was gray, and he can't verify to what the detective knew. He doesn't know if the detective knew it was gray from the VIN. Brandon knew Alex liked to shoot guns. He didn't know if Alex liked to go to the gun range. He didn't go to the gun range with Alex that he remembers. Lori asked if he went to the gun range with her family. Objection, relevance. Judge asks, how is that relevant? And Lori just asks a new question, just moves on. Did Brandon own a gun? He owns them now. He didn't own them on October 2nd. Lori, honestly, she did some flipping. I think she had a whole plan with maybe he shot his own gun, and now that's all gone. He thinks the VIN was provided after the detective left, probably using a friend's phone. He got his phone back that night or the next morning. He didn't buy a new phone in the meantime. No, Lori, you were the one with all the phones. We'll get there. Melanie said she would be out of town that weekend, that one weekend before this. He had the kids over for that weekend for the first time before October 2nd. Basically, remember, this is all going back to referencing old testimony. Their agreement was that he could have them sometimes if she's busy. He was staying at the old house. They couldn't really stay with him because they have to keep it nice for showings because people bought it. So Melanie's like, I'm going out of town. He had an opportunity to be with his kids, so he moved in someplace early. He did so. Melanie knew he was with his kids. And then right after, he got to spend what almost was the final weekend with memories of his child, or memories of their child with their dad, he got shot at. After a situation that Melanie caused, right? If Melanie hadn't had him watch the kids, he wouldn't have been there at that time. He would have been in the old house. Let's continue. Melanie and him only communicated by text. He told Melanie he had dropped the kids off. Gave one to her, then went to the gym. He didn't see anyone out when he went home, no one on the street. He didn't see anyone at the pool location. He can't say how many cars were parked on the street. And Lori keeps trying to do this thing where it's like, well, it's the same neighborhood. It's close physically, but separated by barriers, and you can't just drive over. It's a portion of the same neighborhood, but a different unconnected section. It's a short distance, not connected. He lived in the old house for a while. Objection, relevant, sustained. Lori's basically like, why don't you know more about this neighborhood? Well, he technically lived in a different one that just was nearby. Lori asked if Brandon was trying to have Melanie charged with his murder. Objection, relevant, sustained. No more questions. Good job, Lori. I'm surprised she didn't drop like a gay slur. Like she was going hard on him being gay, thinking that was just going to be some big win. Or at least, insulting him. That's the goal, right? At the end of the day, it's to make people think, well, maybe he is gay. That's what she wants. She wants to harass and re-victimize. June 25th was a painful day that stuck in Brandon's mind. His grandfather was important, and it was a sudden loss. His family is the most important thing for him, and it was also the dissolving of his family. It was the worst thing, and it happened that day. Melanie gave reasons for the marriage ending. Those reasons involved things Melanie claimed that he did to her aunt, Lori Vallow. One of the reasons the marriage was going to end is because of the things Lori said that he did. That included the idea that he hacked into Lori's computer, that he brought up during his argument. That was brought up during the argument with the marriage. The claim that Brandon was trying to take away Lori's recommend was brought up. That is why the texts were sent to Lori. These were lies being said by Melanie. and Lori. He thought this came from Lori. Melanie said she wanted to end the marriage, and there was no thought in his mind that this could happen before June 25th. But things went the way they did because Lori Vallow. It was his belief in conversations with Melanie and Charles Vallow that Lori was involved in causing his divorce. He didn't memorize his transcript with Detective Pillar. He was asked to read parts of the transcript. He was trying to remember exact words of what he said because he wanted to be exact. He saw a two-door Jeep Wrangler, puke green or gray two-door. That's what it was. He remembers the barrel coming out of the rearview window and shooting his car. He was talking to 911 thinking it might have been a paintball gun at the time because a bullet didn't go through the window, and he was trying to figure out how was he shot at, how did the window shatter, but a bullet not go through. Remember, it went up to the very tip at the edge where the glass was inside the door. That's why. He thought someone meant to kill him. He saw the Jeep while he was at the pool. He saw the Jeep leave. The only direction it could go at that point was to leave. It couldn't turn around. He wasn't thinking when he parked at his house that the glass might fall out because the door automatically opening. He wasn't thinking to document the window. He wasn't thinking to take a photo of the Jeep. He didn't see the driver. The VIN number is just used to identify cars. He used the VIN to see what insurance would give Charles the best price. He didn't pay attention to the details of their vehicles. That's all automated. He met the detective that day for the first time. He is who was supposed to communicate with for that case. They were supposed to be in communication. They had a lot of communications with that detective for 5+ years. Those communications were not all about this case. Some are about a completely separate investigation. He told the detective he thought Lori and Alex did it at the scene. Even if Melanie had financial gain, this didn't change his opinion that Lori and Alex were involved. No questions from the jury. Hey, Lori, I guess the jury didn't care too much that you called him gay. They weren't going to probe about the pink pony. Nathan Duncan, who works for Chandler Police, is up. This is about the incident that occurred on July 11th of 2019. 18? 18. 18. It's 18. This is Charles Vallow's murder, I think. No, 11th, 2019. Anyway, this is about a different incident they can't talk about. I don't want. I might have put the date wrong. I don't want to screw it up. It was a incident they can't talk about. The jury doesn't know. That's the main thing. The jury doesn't know. He identifies Lori, and he went to her house, and photos were taken showing Lori's Jeep Wrangler. The witness identifies the photos. Lori has an objection and wants it as a sidebar, and the judge flips through the photos without waiving the objection. They are admitted, and the photos show the Jeep. The colors behind me are sampled from those actual Jeep photos. The top is the top of the Jeep. The bottom is the bottom of the Jeep. I sampled this myself. And the question is, what color is this? I mean, if someone told me this was puke green, I'd agree with it. Turquoise, I'd go with it. Olive green, I'd go with it. Camo green, I don't know if I'd go with that, but it's close enough. Gray, I've seen people call things that I would call green or blue gray, so yeah, I could go with that too. This is why Lori didn't want these photos. These photos destroy all of her color stuff, because now the jury's seen it. Now the jury has seen the color. It wasn't like she had a bright ruby red vehicle. It's not like it was like a normal gray. This isn't a normal gray. Gray is gray. This is definitely not a normal gray. When you think gray, you don't think this color. So, you see the back seat through the back window. So you can see it had a seat in it. Alex Cox had his Ford F-150 there, admitted more photos. They show Alex Cox's truck. He talks of learning about Lori's phone and Alex's phone number. He got a search warrant for Lori's iCloud. He was able to use texts and videos and photos that were saved, proving it was hers. He explains what iCloud is, and it was authenticated by Apple. Yes, this is not an extraction. This was gotten by Apple. That's important. He saw text between Alex Cox and Lori Vallow. Lori told Alex an email address, and then there's a move to admit, but Lori says relevance. It got admitted anyway. Lori gives Alex Cox her email, and they're talking using text. Text between Lori and Brandon were in the iCloud account. And they showed that Lori read them. They were the texts that were previously shown about the temple recommend. Moved to admit. Lori, foundation, objection. The judge asks what foundation is lacking, and Lori says, I don't know, foundation. It's admitted. It is the messages we saw previously about the temple recommend. Lori read those messages. He learned Lori and Alex moved to Rexburg. He got a search warrant with another Lori iCloud. This photo had photos of Lori with her husband, Chad Daybell, in Hawaii. I think maybe the reason I'm getting the dates confused, I'm not sure. I thought I put the correct date of 2019. If that's the case, that would be them would that be them taking the Jeep? Huh. I don't know, I'm going to continue. I'll be corrected in the comments if I got the date wrong. It had emails. It had emails with Lori Vallow moved back to Rexburg, Idaho, looking at property, making payments. They submit affidavit and report some of the emails. Lori wants a sidebar, and the judge has a recess, right? And Lori has a question on the foundation. She wants to know if this witness did the extraction. The state has to explain to her there isn't an extraction. This is an iCloud record sent directly from Apple and verified by them. This is a search warrant subpoena. The judge says just ask a follow-up how he got it, and it's likely going to be admitted. So yeah, I'm probably going to add here right at the end if it was 2018 or 2019 where those photos are from, because I want to be sure. I wasn't mistaken. I just, out of an abundance of caution, I had to check. That was the date that Charles Vallow was murdered. That is why they were at that location. Just verifying. It's a lot of dates, a lot of times, a lot of years, and I don't want to mess anything super important up, so I'm clarifying here. We are back, and the detective says he wrote a search warrant to get the records. Apple has a portal to do it, but there's other ways you can do it. He's not sure exactly which one they did, but he thinks it was through email, and then it was used Cellbrite to organize. They show emails about Lori's move to Rexburg and a hotel stay, receipts from the emails, signing a property, being active in the property portal, payment, October 1st email. Thank you for the payment. You got dates for another cell phone. It was Chad Daybell's phone number with romantic communications with Lori. He verifies it. Lori objects. Foundation. How was it extracted? Denied. Witness says it's a call, detail records from the provider. It just shows dates and times, cell towers, not the actual contents of the text. Lori's up. Lori says when you request with Apple, use a portal. He says sometimes you send a hard drive. This time he thinks it was email. It was 5+ years ago. He doesn't remember. He could ask Apple, but he doesn't remember. He doesn't even know if his own emails from 5 years ago still exist to check. Apple sends a proprietary file that's opened by Cellbrite. Asks, how do you all know the data is in the report? Basically, if you open it, how do you know Cellbrite gave you all the data? He said you'd have to ask the detectives that use Cellbrite. Lori basically asks if a detective could remove things in the report, and he says technically possible, but never seen it. He can't verify that. They're trusting the detectives. Lori asked when it was sent to him, why it was sent to him, and he said he's the one that was authorized to get it from the search warrant. He has no reason to believe it isn't the full report, but he can't verify that. He didn't go and use Cellbrite. AT&T provided the other information. He wanted calls to verify who Lori was communicating with. Lori asks, how can you verify that the information from AT&T is accurate? Yes, you heard that right. Lori is basically now saying that what if there's a vast conspiracy between detectives and AT&T? No pink pony? They trust AT&T. You wouldn't know if AT&T deleted the text messages, though, because they trust AT&T. Lori asked, would he know if things are out of order? He said, that's more for someone who handles it as an expert. Some carriers retain text messages for a period of time. Some just save when it was sent. They are relying on AT&T's data, and he got the AT&T data by email. Cellbrite can also make that more readable. He didn't look at this on Cellbrite. He used a thing called Nighthawk to organize it. He's never had any issues, and then he compares it afterwards to the original to make sure it has all the data. He said he looked at the iCloud account hundreds of hours. That probably piques the jury's interest. AT&T was less. Again, I think that that's kind of unfair that he has to say hundreds of hours, because Lori is pitching this was a fishing expedition, right? That's what she's going with. I didn't really do it. They're forcing it in. He doesn't, they can't say it's hundreds of hours because of her other murders. He doesn't have data from the AT&T phone, but the content can be found in Lori's iCloud. So basically what he's saying is AT&T just says when the call was sent, received, but we can compare that to the iCloud and know what was said. He has a very lengthy report on Lori's iCloud, all one report, multiple iClouds are included, maybe 2 more iClouds. He doesn't remember when he made that report. Lori is done. Redirect. Goes through the process to get a search warrant, how that works, probable causes, judge. AT&T keeps call data as a normal course of their business. Sellbrite organizes data and is used across police departments across the whole country. The detectives that use Sellbrite don't even know what the case is about. So they wouldn't even know what to hide. They just know what the judge allows, so only the allowed portions are then sent to the investigators. He spent hundreds of hours on the iCloud's account, and there's no jury questions. They forgot to actually admit the affidavit into evidence, and it's admitted now with no objection. Next up is Tom Olzak. Used to be a state trooper, now works for the Secret Service as a network intrusion forensic analyst. Oh boy, Lori, how are you going to respond to that one? He said an infotainment center is a dashboard on your car with information, entertainment connected. You can connect your phone to it. He was asked to look at the infotainment center in the Jeep. He needs to know the VIN and trim to know if he has to investigate if it'll work. He got the information from the Jeep after reviewing the VIN number and thought it would work, but had to physically visit the Jeep to know for sure. There were no photos of the infotainment center. He got there and it wasn't the front head that he saw on the website. He learned it was a cheaper model. Maybe he could do a chip retrieval method, so he took it with him. Wasn't able to get the information. Did the same process in the F-150. Supposed to be able to get data and call logs. This vehicle had an 8 gig chip, so there was nothing at all from October on it. Basically, it didn't have enough space, so it overwrote stuff. It still pulled in stuff from January 2020. He could see data from phone numbers that had been connected. There were call logs from November 19th, and it kept GPS logs from December. Lori, no questions. Jury, no questions. Smart. She couldn't really do anything with that expert. There was nothing really there. Detective Ryan Pillar is up. The detective, we have heard so much about when Brian was up, so I'm going to say he could be a revenge target for Lori. He gives his credentials. They had 2 crime scene techs at the time. He was one of them, and they contracted with others to do lab work. He was on duty October 2nd, 2019. He was in the meeting with a sergeant, and they was told to respond to this incident. Arrived at about 10:30 a.m. About an hour after the call, there was a crime scene tape and vehicles blocking the road. They were briefed with a basic rundown. He looked at the Tesla in the driveway, saw the damage, glass on the driveway, and landscaping. He'd seen bullet holes in cars before, and he saw the damage and thought it was a bullet hole. Angle, went through metal, scraping, the cleanliness of the damage, indicative of a fast-moving projectile. Glass was inside the car and out. Cones in the street were there before his arrival. He thought it was locations where the glass was found and where Brandon approximately was shot at, according to what he said. He wasn't responsible for actually processing the scene, but observed glass in the roadway. He knew the officer did a brief interview, but he wanted a more thorough one. As a detective, he didn't have a body-worn camera at the time, so it was recorded with a digital recorder, so he had audio. He saw Brandon standing with his friends, had to figure out which one was Brandon. Friends weren't there before the incident, so he went to interview with Brandon. Brandon was interviewed in a vehicle because it had air conditioning and it was hot. He got his name, phone number, basic information. Brandon said he thought Lori and Alex Cox might want to kill him. He talked about the incident in Chandler in 2019, and that's part of why he identified them. He got a description of the vehicle before the interview, and Brandon gave the same description. License plate, no rear tire, where it was parked, nothing he provided was different. He asked about cameras on the Tesla, no video storage on the Tesla. They even contacted Tesla to make extra sure there's nothing that could be saved. They never expected to find a casing because it was fired out of the window, according to Brandon's description. Brandon thought it was a rifle. He thought maybe a suppressor, just said large barrel. Didn't think it was a handgun. All he saw was the barrel. He wasn't present when fragments were collected. Molding was damaged by the bullet. He saw that. He saw the glass where it laid, and eventually, later it was spread out to find damage, and they put a sticker right where the divot in the glass was that lined up with the divot in the actual Tesla. No more fragments were located in their extended search. Not surprising, it was a long distance looking for small fragments. No video surveillance on the street area. They asked to see Brandon's phone. He gives a story, but they know phones have a lot of data, and it could bring up things like threats. They didn't find anything. They took his Tesla to the police department to look for more, and it was turned back over to Brandon when they were done. Brandon talked about the incident in Chandler, and the detective reached out to the Chandler police. He got copies of photos of the Jeep, ran a check on the Jeep. By October 9th, he had license plate and VIN of the Jeep. He gives out his work phone number and name to victims. That is the purpose of his work cell phone. He calls and answers when he can. Melanie moved to Idaho. Lori moved to Idaho. Alex moved to Idaho. Melanie joined Alex and Lori in Idaho. October 16th, he learned Lori's Jeep was recorded by a license plate reader in Holbrook, Arizona. That recording was 26 hours and 46 minutes before the shooting. He took a photo of the Jeep, no wheel on the back. He worked with other detectives, learned of license plate hits in Idaho, worked with Idaho police to seize the Jeep. It was impounded. He drafted a search warrant and they traveled to process it. Others with him, including a crime scene analyst. This is that crime scene analyst that Lori isn't allowed to mention some incident. I think people said it was drinking on the job. Someone will correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but that can't be brought up because that happened years after this. They wanted to find gunshot residue, DNA, fingerprints removed, the disinformation center, casings, projectiles, all physical evidence. He explains what gunshot residue is, how you collect it, how they looked for it at the end of the Jeep. They looked for DNA. He explains how it's collected. They looked for fingerprints. He explained how it's corrected, and recess for the weekend. The state has a DNA person flying in on Monday. Others are flying in too. They might have to actually break up this witness just to be certain they can get all of their Monday witnesses done. And the judge is going to allow it, very obviously. The whole issue with the witnesses is Lori Vallow's fault. All timing issues are Lori Vallow's fault, so it's going to be allowed. We know that. And now we are at the end of the day. So my thoughts are, Lori grasped quite a bit with Brandon. The Brandon testimony is obviously the highlight/lowlight of the day. Her focus on the pink pony, her ignoring of processes, her opening the door. There's a chance with this witness she could get personal. She seemed to have a personal vendetta against this detective. It seemed pretty obvious to me. And I wouldn't be surprised with what was involved in this questioning so far with Chandler, that she tries to open the door even more with Charles Vallow. And it is going to probably be a mess. But that is a mess for Monday. That's Monday for us. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the coverage. Wild. I had some issues with like power and stuff that delayed me a bit today. Again, that's hopefully good. Plan to be back Monday, covering it, seeing what nonsense Lori tries, and then remember, we got this trial next week. If it's not wrapped up by Friday, I might be taking Friday off. So you might not get an update from me until Saturday. Sorry about that. I'll probably be cheating and reading Nate Eaton's texts and tweets and, all that stuff, and maybe watch some footage out of order. I'm sorry. It might not be all in. I will do a video if it's in order, but I might cheat and watch some segments if it gets really spicy on Friday. There's a chance the trial's done by then. Things are going pretty quick with some of these witnesses because in a lot of ways, it sounds like they're going to get a lot of experts on Monday. And after that, that seems to wrap up, I would think, a core piece of it. And then if Lori doesn't put on a defense, what's left?